to The Lioness Method, the podcast where we chat with female entrepreneurs and business leaders who share their hottest tips for creating long-lasting success that you can implement today. And now, here's your host, Narissa Sue, Master Integrated Breakthrough Coach.
Hello, beautiful divine lionesses. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm your host, Narissa Sue, leadership and legacy coach, and I have a phenomenal speaker for you today. I am so super excited. I had the pleasure of meeting Cate Stillman at She Podcast Live when I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and she was on fire. I was totally fangirling in the audience, and I was like, yes, because she's so utterly raw, transparent, and she was so giving and generous with her knowledge. And so I just thought she was the perfect woman to come and just love on you guys today. So Cate is an evolutionary thought leader. She's a global tribe builder and an author in the field of rewilding humans, orienting towards meaning and purpose, and getting deeply invested in life. And she's also the ringleader of yogahealer.com, a prolific writer, author, and curriculum developer for modern humans. Provocateur. That's quite the title. Well, welcome, Cate.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be with you and your people. Yeah, go entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Well, no, I was super excited to just have this chat with you because like I said, I was really excited to hear your talk at She Podcast Live and just your energy and also being able to get a little bit into your book, The Master of You. And so I can't wait to talk about all those things today. All the things.
We can go many a place.
Yes. So I would love to just start with what would you like to share with the audience about how you came to be the yoga healer?
Yeah. So I took that moniker over 20 years ago and developed yogahealer.com. I was living in San Francisco at the time, studying yoga, and I was an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner, and I needed a domain name, and I was naturally a content creator. I was naturally a curriculum developer, and I found that the way that I was taught wasn't the fastest way to learn, and so that was the curriculums I started to develop. Was like, hey, how do I take this 1,000 hours and give it to you in 2 hours so that you don't have to do all that work? And I'm just naturally good at that. I'm naturally at the process of distillation from complexity to simplicity. So I was able to do that with this ancient wisdom tradition, which is Ayurveda from India, and also with yoga to a huge degree. And my mind loves the depth and the complexity, but I find like most people aren't that interested. They are interested in the results. So how do I get people to results faster? And my goal from the beginning with that was personal and planetary thrive, that every person should thrive in their bodies. When we do, we're naturally connected to ecosystem, and the planet thrives as well. The planet always thrives with smarter humans. So if humans are not smart in their own bodies, and if they're in that's physical bodies, but it's also emotional bodies with worrying, with feeling sad, with, just not having basically the emotions that come with positive stressors, but instead of having the emotions that go with negative stressors, and that it really affects everything. Like we're all, just in the same web. So I devoted my life to helping people on the planet thrive. And it brought me on a journey of entrepreneurship. Yoga Healer I know you guys are entrepreneurs. I don't just like number drop, but like, because you are, I just want to give you a sense of scope and team. So last year we did 1.6 million. We're probably on track to do about that this year. Next year we might do at least 60% more. That's what we've predicted what we'll do next year for a number of internal team reasons. I know you guys are probably not working alone in your own companies. And even if you just are starting with a virtual assistant, or whether you have a small team, I have a team of about 12. The company's always been online. The entire team development side has always been online. So we started with VAs in 2005, and now we have a team mostly based in the Philippines. The woman who's more or less my integrator for my team is Filipino, and she's been with me for years, and she's built a lot of the infrastructure in the company in the last couple of years where we've gone there. So that's been an amazing blast. My team is a mix of men and women. We are more female right now. And one of my goals is like everyone on the team gets healthier. Everyone on the team really experiences what we do at Yoga Healer. All the solutions on our health side at Yoga Healer are habits that are free. So someone could do them in jail and still thrive in their body and in their life. And that's kind of like, does it pass the being in jail test? And so it's really empowering, overall. And in the process, I've learned how to build a scalable company. And I've always had a very healthy profit margin, which is also to me really important it's just part of my personality. I believe in wealth. I enjoy helping other people grow. And so for me, that has a lot to do with hiring and paying other people to do things that empower their growth and keep enabling me to create more opportunities for people.
I love that. You just shared so much in that one place. And yes, I totally get the hiring factor. Hiring the right team is essential. I actually came from an executive recruiting background. I was in corporate America for like 15 years. So it is all about having the right team around you. Yeah, for sure.
We're doing some team building stuff in this book that I know everyone who's in team building has heard of Patrick Lencioni. And this is like his field guide, the workbook to it. So yeah, it's just so great.
Yeah, that's like the Bible. That's great. Yes. For recruiting anyways. But yeah, so you mentioned a few things which I absolutely love and that you actually cover in your book, The Master of You, which I'm working my way through, and it's just packed with so much information. But I love the way that you take a holistic approach to caring for the entrepreneur, because without our bodies, we cannot make our businesses grow, right? So we can't thrive. So what led you to come to this place of understanding, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have an added advantage that like my vertical is applying ancient wisdom to modern life to not only experience thrive in the body, but actually enlightenment. Like yoga and Ayurveda have a very tall order when it comes to definition of health. And it includes enlightenment, right? So it's like, what is enlightened living? What is the art of living?
What is enlightenment for somebody who is not sure exactly what that means?
Well, I think it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For me, what it means, and this is what I see in the Master of You in it's a book, but the reason I write books is because I want to support our course members. Essentially, it's like, so we have a Master of You course, and it's a curriculum of like, what is beyond your wildest dreams? Like, what are your holistic, multi-dimensional life goals? Because if we grow our business, but we leave our body behind, like that doesn't work. If we grow our revenue and profit margin, but we leave our relationships behind, like that didn't work so hot either. I just talked to someone who grew a team, but didn't grow their profit margin. Like that doesn't work. So it's like things need to work in a lot of ways. And what I have found from some of the corporate strategic, where that goes into small business coaching, is like no one had a good system for the whole person and the whole business. And that's what I created with a Master of You curriculum. And then the book was like, here's what we're doing in there. Here's how it works. Here's our field guide.
I love that. Yeah. Because it covers a lot of ground. It covers definitely a lot of ground.
Yeah. And what I found was that there's, in terms of how to simplify it, right? Like how to simplify how to have a body that you thrive in, and how to have habits that lead to awakened living. Because your question was around enlightenment. And my experience of enlightenment is that you are fully in the seat of the creator, and you experience the boundless nature of that in terms of what you want to do with your life. So where it goes, and where the Master of You curriculum goes, is like, how do you get really clear on what your unique dream is? Like, what is your purpose? And it unfolds in chapters, and usually like the next chapters will build on the past chapter. So for you, it's like all that stuff you did in hiring and corporate recruiting and all that led to Lioness Method, right? And then it's like, And then the what's next, where's this thing going in the iterations of life, right? So if we look at life itself as like if we take lean management to that and be like iteration, 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 like where do I want to end up? And what is even beyond that? Because when it's that which supersedes the rational mind. It's not a logical thing, which is why it's the beyond your wildest dreams part. And that when people really get into that and then they learn how to develop strategy to get there, everything changes.
That's the hard part. I think it's because we just start off, like you said, when you first started sharing, was like, I got into this because I wanted to help people. Right. And I think that's most entrepreneurs is like, oh, I just want to help people. Like I'm gonna teach yoga, I'm gonna teach breath work, I'm gonna do coaching, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this thing that helps people. And then you're like, oh my God, there's all these other things I now have to understand and know to get into alignment, like you're saying, to make all the parts work. So there's money actually coming out on the other end of this huge machine we're building.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. And that, I mean, I find with a lot of entrepreneurs, like just really getting to profit margin and body goals, that's a huge, like just those two, like how do we implement that in real time is huge. With the body goals, what we've learned and yoga healer for 20 years is that circadian rhythm is that's boss. So what are the habits of circadian rhythm and how many of those habits do we need to have automated, meaning that we're not making a conscious choice? So an automated habit is one that you just do. You don't even, those choices were made a while back. And then you earned the habit and then you automated the habit. So for instance, like for me, intermittent fasting is an automated habit. I don't think, am I going to do that today? For me,
is it
walking
optional?
is it optional? Like walking is an automated habit for me. And I walk, I'm like a total dork walker. Like my posture is insanely amazing because I'm rewiring my nervous system and my neuroplasticity while I'm walking. That's why walking is so important to me. It's not unusual for me to like go for a walk and send 5 messages to my team that are all happening at a higher order thinking. That for me happens while walking. And that's just a thing. Like you're a biped, like everyone, PS everyone, like walking is the core movement habit for Homo sapiens. Like we became upright for a reason. Crawling's not too far behind it because crawling recovers functional movement. So if anyone has like joint pain or even like, anxiety, right? Where there's just worry, there's too much on the mind. Well, the femur bones are too far forward in the hip socket. So just getting around and crawling around on all fours. And with CrossFit and functional movement, there's amazing videos on YouTube on how adults crawl, like just benefits like that. When you're recovering primal movement,
I think that could be a new program, Crawling to Success.
Crawling your way to success. I have a new book coming out in January called Wild Habits. And there is a cool little graphic in there on how to crawl. Cause there's like gorilla crawling and lizard crawling and like all these different ways that just totally open up, again, higher level thinking. So for entrepreneurs, like one of our biggest issues is critical issues. Like how are you solving for critical issues like every single day so that like you're solving the right problems at the right time that are creating bigger and better horizons for tomorrow. And when we aren't thinking clearly, we get bogged down in less important work, just not the work we actually need to be doing at the time. So the habits that we want to automate enable that. And once enough of those habits are automated, enlightenment becomes just a natural way of being where we're super open to ourselves as the creator and the much bigger potential for our life. And we literally are at a higher order operating system in our physiology. And then it's actually a lot easier to run a team.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, I do a lot of work with clients on neuro-linguistic programming. And we work with timeline therapy and hypnotherapy. So I love all that rewiring and neuroscience talk. And that's my jam. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is so awesome, because your book does give a very clear blueprint on how to kind of come into yourself and find that deep dream. And I also like the illustration where you have Super Cate and you're saying, okay, draw yourself as a superhero. That's so great. But you also talk about rewilding. So I hear a lot of structure, right? Which a lot of people are like, oh, structure, but that's really our friend as we really step into our entrepreneurship. But what is this concept of rewilding humans?
Yeah, let me go to structure first, and then I'll go to rewilding. So
Okay.
there's and this is important for everyone to, I think, to write down. It's something that I train anyone I'm working with in their business. I train them in structure precedes evolution. It's so important to write that down, meaning like you can't evolve if you don't have the structures to evolve. So even if we go back to the lifestyle habits part of it, if you don't have the structure in your environment to do those habits, good luck. You'll just do it today.
Yeah, the brain's lazy. It just defaults right back into that easy setting, right?
Yeah. So we have to change our environment. And when you change your environment or architect your environment for the habits you want to have and the person that you want to become, now we're talking. That's structure. You've put a new structure in place, which means there can be a next level habit flow. Okay. So rewilding.
Yes. We're like, get out your notebooks, ladies.
I know. What happened when we started following circadian rhythm as a community, and I have another book called Body Thrive, and that goes with another curriculum and community that's called Body Thrive. I don't tend to get too imaginative with names because we have too many things going on. So it's like the book goes to the course, and in the course we do the book so that there's nothing that's not implemented, right? And that's what I find is like, I don't really read books, I do books. In course, in how I write, but also like when I pick up someone's book, it's like, that's the book I'm going to do. Like, we're going to implement that person's wisdom, or why bother if that's like, that's sort of my take on like, there's only so much time
I love
to write a
that.
book.
Yeah.
So what happened was my community in Body Thrive, which started, that particular community grew out of a 2-hour workshop and became a 1-year-long course. And it became that book called Body Thrive. So I started teaching that 2-hour workshop in 2001 in San Francisco. So I've been like standing in the same place for a long time. And in the evolution of all of those little experiments with people over time really added up. So when Body Thrive, the course got going in 2012, now we have a decade of that course never stopping. Constantly going, constantly growing, and evolving and innovating. It's a lot of experimentation. It's a lot of like what really works, what really gets people to what we talked about before, like what really gets people to their body goals with all their other stuff going on,
with life and chaos and pandemics. Yes.
Yeah. And where we landed was like, okay, circadian rhythm is what the habits of yogis have always been based on. So that's the Body Thrive book, is basically like, here's the circadian rhythm. Well, once people started doing that at another level, there was this other level to it. And that's what happens with anything that's of higher order, brings you into a next higher order, because evolution doesn't stop, right? It keeps going. And there was these pieces that we've left behind. And just like we left behind some of the ancient wisdom traditions, including Ayurveda and yoga, but also including grandmother's medicine from every indigenous culture. It's like there's just been a lot that in shamanic medicine from every indigenous culture as well. It's like there's been a lot that was left behind. And so what happened with Wild Habits is we just started naturally like doing this other level of habits that was awakening our humanity, including the genome, like awakening our genetic potential at another level, awakening the microbiome, which there's a ton of genetic information in the microbiome. So you're like your body's ability to continually adapt and thrive with viruses and bacteria. That's the job of the microbiome. Like, what does that look like? Like, what does it look like to actually be in our peak performance, in our full physiological potential? And what the habits look like at that point is wild habits. They look like the habits that people had before electricity. They look like the habits that people had before running water. And it's kind of wild because they're all free and they're all part of our history as humans. So it's not like doing something new. It's new to you in your lifetime, perhaps, but these habits have always been part of how humans evolved over millennia. I mean, on some of these habits, we know go back 200 million years with hominids. So that's kind of that's sort of where we're at now, is like, whoa. And they're weird. I mean, some of them are not weird at all. Like intermittent fasting at this point, it was weird 5-10 years ago when we were working with that habit, it was like, people were like, what, 6 small meals a day? My doctors keep telling, it's all in Health Shape magazine, news, like all that was like 6 small meals a day. So fasting 10 years ago, intermittent fasting was way less popular than it is now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much a household thing now. I mean, most people that I know
In theory,
Mhm.
probably not in practice. If it was in practice, we wouldn't be seeing COVID death rates
Yeah,
like
that's
this.
true. And diabetes and things like that too.
Every
So,
disease of chronic inflammation. So the World Health
yeah.
Organization said 3 out of 5 people alive right now are going to die of chronic systemic inflammation, and that number is projected to increase. So it's like people are getting the memo of fasting. They're not implementing.
Mhm. I think it's just like we were talking about self-care earlier. It's like people still view these things as something nice to do. They don't realize that it's like actually, no, this is something that's life-saving. These are survival tools for the fittest if you want to be thriving in your body and in your life.
That's right. I mean, and I think there's some really good reasons for that. Like if you are a modern human, which anyone listening is, it's like you're up against modern culture, which is degenerating. It's degenerative, meaning modern culture today has the habits of degenerative health. So
Mhm.
your health, if you're just paying attention to what everyone else is paying attention to, that means you're on a degenerative path, which means you have chronic inflammation, and it might show up in your emotional body as negative emotions. It might show up in
Mhm.
your physical body as struggling with any kind of immune thing. Like, it can be
Yeah.
allergies. It can be like food allergies. I mean, all of those are signs. Like if you're not just like, I'm stoked, I'm strong, I'm resilient, I'm adaptable, you have inflammation.
Yeah.
That's experiencing regeneration, where your body's just getting smarter and regenerating and adapting and giving you more possibilities and
Mhm.
more genetic diversity from the microbiome. So if
Mm.
we look at like factory food, if we look at processed food, if we look at eating, even just eating too frequently, eating too much, you have inflammation. Like you're on that degenerative path. I mean, so
Mhm.
the human body is designed for enlightenment. We're designed as the most exquisite technology that's ever been generated. And most people are treating their bodies like, basically like these little
Dumpsters.
pleasure-seeking dumpsters. Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like, this gives me pleasure for a minute, and it makes my emotions go away. So, like, awesome. And then it's like, oh gosh, that doesn't go to the right
Yeah.
place.
No. It's like we are definitely battling against that, or just releasing those old habits is a better way to look at it, I think. Um
Yeah, but like we are up against so much. I mean, when I know with my parents, and like they've been watching the news every day for the last, I mean, for their whole lives, but like the news really changed a lot in the last year and a half, 2 years, and the amount of fear that they like, and it's not natural for my parents to be in that fear cycle or really be in that I mean, even like as sort of like political as things have become, and how black and white the news is portrayed, depending on which channel you're listening to, it's a different black and white. But like,
yes.
like there's a lot of that, and it's just having a massive impact. So things that used to be, when the country was more bound around nationalism, there was fear of other, but there wasn't fear within community, or fear even within, to some degree, within families, extended friendship groups that were
Mhm.
on a different side of an issue. And, that just creates very rapid degeneration, and,
I
through inflammation.
I definitely I feel you on that. I believe that fear is like really the predominant epidemic we have right now with everything that's going on. It's a fear, and then the lack of knowledge of what to do with that. So what are some tools that you shared with your parents that kind of help them get out of that?
So for them, I've actually asked them to stop watching the news.
Mhm. I love
And I've
that.
seen this really effective with our Body Thrive members, is like anyone that's having any sort of worry, fear, anxiety, it's like, let's just get you, it's not to be uninformed, it's to actually help you get more informed by your own intuition. So instead of outsourcing your attention and your power, let's start to change that cycle of your mind going outside of yourself to get information, to your mind starting to actually generate from inside of yourself. Right. And so what that means is actually a lot more silence, a lot more walking, a lot more. Most people do not have a meditation practice, but just
Mhm.
simply allowing listening to nothing is really a cool practice. And then you might hear a bird, or you might hear a sound in the tree, or you might hear a car go by, or you might hear your own thoughts a little more clearly and see which thoughts you're entertaining and which thoughts you're entertaining that you start to have some perspective on, that like, maybe I should investigate that thought. Is it true? Right. Is it useful? Thinking that, like, is that making me more into who I want to be or less into who I want to be just by having that thought? Is there like a better thought? Is there a higher level thought? Is there a better question I could ask myself to even investigate that? And so the questioning process with the mind can then start to begin, and then intuition can awaken. And if you can awaken intuition, you're much more connected to the body. So then the body might be like, I'm tired. And it might come up with a really good idea, like take a nap.
Rest.
Right?
Imagine that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Whereas like the mind might be like, I'm worried, I'm concerned, gets the message from the body's tired. And it's like the response is caffeine. Right. Which is then going to do a whole other thing with the mind.
A whole other spiral.
Yeah.
My goodness. Oh my gosh. Our time has gone by so quickly. There's so many different things that we can chat about. But I would love to ask you a couple more questions if you're good on time.
Yeah.
So what are you working on personally right now that will allow you to serve your clients in bigger and better ways? Because you are a very dynamic woman. So I know that you're doing all the things. So what do you do in the background to stay inspired and maintain that clarity?
Oh yeah. I have no problem. I have no problem like maintaining inspiration either. Like it's channeling it, right? It's like, what do we, like, there's so much opportunity. What do we decide to do? What do we decide consciously to not do? Because we can't do all the things all the time. So I'll answer this question on a personal level, and then I'll extrapolate out to relationship, family level, and then I'll extrapolate to company. So personally, I'm living the wild habits, which range from intermittent fasting to urine therapy. There's about 10 episodes of what that is on my Yoga Healer podcast. If anyone's like, I don't know what that is, that sounds crazy. It is totally crazy. And it's insanely effective. Like, I'm someone who already had all the other habits people were talking about. And this is the one that has landed me as like the number one rewilding habit, the number one keystone habit. Like, if you have enough of the other ones, like, this is a higher level, just again, habit that improves cognitive function. So that's super exciting. I'm walking, like I mentioned before. Last night I maybe got 11 hours of sleep. Like, I'm not shy on sleep. Not that I get that much every night. Some nights I might get 7. But I'm going into winter solstice right now. So it's like my body will get a lot more sleep in the next 6 weeks than it will at any other time in the annual cycle. So because of my background in Ayurvedic medicine, which is totally plugged into the daily cycle, that's circadian rhythm, but also the seasonal and annual cycle, you get a very, very deep energy from living in sync with the annual cycle. And I'm not that serious of a person. Like, there's a ski hill out my door here. I have a place in Mexico where there's a surf break out my door. Like, I'm very much into fun, adventure, sports with friends and family and that sort of thing. Okay. So then in terms of family, we apply Master of You to like, what is beyond, as a family, what's beyond our wildest dreams. And so right now, and we apply the Master of You curriculum to our family. It's very informal because we've internalized it. So it's not like we do it like a corporate board meeting. Although sometimes we do, like sometimes we get out the pen and paper and like we really get clear on it. We get really clear on what our critical issues are and what our growth potential is. So we're forming another company. My husband also has his own company, Teton Glass. I have Yoga Healer for 20 some years. Each of our companies does, we both have teams. We're both over $1 million in revenue, blah, blah, blah. But we're forming this third company it's something around like, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's like a lot in real estate, and where that meets, I think basically like yoga healer sanctuaries, like these places that people can rent and be in a high level consciousness place and do what the cool things are in that place to do. So we've done a lot with our own investments over time, and we have too many properties to spend time in. We love them all and we want to share them. So we're right now under contract for 35,000 square feet of building, of a building that needs renovation. That also has rentable spaces within it. And then a couple houses. We have a couple places in Mexico. We have a couple places here in the Tetons, and really starting to look at those as properties to elevate consciousness. So that's been a super fun way for me and my husband to connect, because like it leverages his strengths, which are much more in the real world, have a lot to do with the building industry. It leverages my strengths, which are like, all the stuff on like what people actually want in their life, and then how to build team and infrastructure and automation around the things that we can do that for in a business. And then it pushes our growing edge, which for us as a couple is really important. Like we both have entrepreneurial DNA, like to a pretty insane degree of like, we can't work for other people. We have a lot of potential to do things on our own, and we don't really give a fuck what other people think. So we just end up doing things, and being in growing markets. Like we naturally end up in growing markets because we're entrepreneurs. So of course, and that's really fun for our marriage. And I got to say, like, I know that's not everybody's marriage strategy, but for us, like to help each other grow. And some of the skill sets that we're actively growing in this next phase is cash flow. Because in order to have all this, diversified property investment, blah, 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 and run the companies and the people and all the things, like you run into new issues, and we want to understand more about cash flow at higher levels. So that's what we're doing there. We also, our child, I guess entrepreneurs tend to breed entrepreneurs. So
I love that. That's great news, everybody.
Right. So like my 13-year-old, she might be able to hold a job at some point better than my husband or I ever could. I don't think so. Like, I really think and so we're creating a business that that play to her strengths as well. She loves design. She loves interior design. She loves people and connecting people with place. So it's like, we're sort of, and it's not like we have any expectation for her to do that. It's just that it's interesting at this phase in her life and who she is. And for her to see us acting this out in this way is important. And then for team at Yoga Healer, I'm like really trying to, more or less hand the company to the team and give them everything they need to run and grow that, where I'm still in the seat of visionary, which means I'm writing the books. I'm creating the curriculums. I'm coaching the members at the head level, at the head coach level. And they're doing, they're leading the team to the vision. So that's fun. It's nice to be here. It was hell getting here, FYI.
Oh my goodness.
I went through all those levels of hell of Dante's Inferno.
Just like, and it looks good from up here.
Yes. It was worth it.
It was worth it. Yes. If those two things you can take away from the conversation today, it's stop giving a fuck what other people think, and it's worth it. Right. So keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And all the shit comes up like at different, you know what I mean? Like, I think we just get better at handling the shit storms and knowing what's ours in it. Like what's ours that created that, and what's everyone else like, and where it goes. Cause I know a lot of you guys as your whole niche is around entrepreneurs and leadership. It's like, you set a big enough goal, big enough stuff's going to come up.
Yeah, it always throws some challenges in there to teach us a few things on the way up, right? So
yeah.
Which awesome. Well, there's so many other things I would love to ask you, but I know.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I have time. I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I have us for like another. I've got us for another 15 minutes, so you're totally good.
Okay. Awesome. So in the book, I know that you also talk about embracing a solid B-. So what is that premise? Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this resides originally in the work of Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, and she was coming from a clinical psychology background, and basically, I think she confirmed what a lot of people had suspected all along. Definitely any entrepreneur had already discovered I think humans have been entrepreneurial for, I don't even know how far back, right? It's like
beginning of time, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, since the beginning of times. It's like and I mean, because really, what is that? It's like you see a vision, you make it happen, right? And you go for it on your own. So if you're in the tech world, and actually I learned a lot of this from my dad, who was he he's 80 something now. So he grew up with the computer development industry from like mainframes into PCs and the development of hardware into software and all that. And, you know, the whole idea of like you ship product before you've worked out the kinks.
Mhm.
That's B minus. And that's B minus thinking. And then what happens is the customers find the kinks and they tell you what to fix and you fix it and you get to A, but you do it through iterations and design thinking and lean management and liberating structures. There's like a lot of different, you know, philosophical systems and even, you know, project management implementation systems that like deal with that head on, that kind of thinking head on. What I find is that there are a lot of like individuals who understand that theoretically or practice it in business aren't practicing it personally. And so what happens instead is like you set an ideal. Everyone has an ideal, right? And we actually help people in body goals session like figure out exactly the parameters of your ideal so we know where you're going. You know where you're going. And people can do that. Can I mention that link actually?
Yes, and I'll also put it in the show notes too, so everybody
Okay.
who's listening can take advantage.
Yeah, so it's just yogahealer.com/body-goals. And that will help you get clear on like what are the goals related to your body? Exactly what is the ideal and what are the parameters? Because like anyone here who's, you know, with your companies, like if you don't set a goal that's smart, if you don't know exactly what you're measuring towards, like it's going to be hard to even know when you're there.
You
So
just
that's
spin your wheels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the ideal, but then like where you want to measure your progress from isn't against the ideal. And that's what people who are aiming for an A or people who are on perfectionist mindset, they're measuring against the ideal. They're not measuring from where they were yesterday or where they were last year or where they were 2 years ago or what the habits of the family they grew up with was. And where are they against that? And that's B minus thinking of like, all you got to do is a little better than yesterday.
I love that. Progress over perfection. There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So there's one more thing I was curious about, because this has always been one of the areas that I've struggled with is calendaring. And in your book, you say optimize your calendar as a spiritual practice. And when I read that, it jumped off the page because I was like, whoa. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, you bet. So once you know what you're aiming for, like what is the deeper dream and then what's the bigger vision of that, and then you go through the fire element chapter in Master of You and you actually go through actually how are you going to create strategy to meet those goals. What happens is you'll end up, if you do strategy, right, you end up with a decent plan. You end up with the best plan that you could have created. And now that you have a plan, you have to put it into real time. And then a whole other level of shitstorm is going to come up. But it would never have come up if you didn't have a good strategy. Right? And so what has to happen at that point, once you have a good plan, is it has to change your calendar. Like your calendar always has to change to implement the next vision. It always has to change. So we do that in the Master of You course. Like we do that as we do it 3 times a year where we do like a real 2-day deep dive, like 2-day deep dive workshop where we're in it to win it. And like, it's a 2-year program because it takes 2 years to automate strategic planning. That's what I find, like holistic life goal strategic planning. But what happens is at the end of 2 years, people are like, oh my gosh, I really am living a life that's beyond my wildest dreams. And it's like, yeah, that's why we did that.
And that's exciting because then, again, we're talking about habits that we don't have to think about, right? So
Yeah. Well, and it's why my husband and I can grow a business really fast and not actually have to sit down and map it out as much because we've embodied that implementation automation process of strategy into plan into time, which shows up in calendar, and then into like what comes up next. What do we need to learn next?
I love that.
So having an ideal or innovative calendar of like, when you look at the plan, you have to step back and say, well, like, how should I really be using my time? And I actually create a Google Calendar on that. It's like every quarter, like this is how I should be using my time so that comes to fruition, which usually everyone's always busy with what they were doing before. And that's why it ends up bringing up a whole new shitstorm is like, you already had too much going on. And now you've got to use time entirely different in order to achieve more holistic life goals, which could also have everything to do with profit margin. Like
Mhm.
we're not excluding profit margin or investments from holistic life goals, but we're also saying like, don't leave your body behind. Don't leave your relationships behind. Now, what does this look like in real time? And this is where like that question around what is enlightenment, it's where you shapeshift your time. It's where
Mm.
you really shapeshift your time to meet your goals. And then you test it out. And it's like, how well did I do? Where did I get trapped? Like, where did I get caught up? Where did I default to how I did things yesterday? Now, why? Do I not want it bad enough? Do I have to deal with some attachment issues? Do I have like, it's like what comes up in the process of that is where it gets really interesting, because that brings us right into water element in master of you, which is integrity.
Mm.
So what happens at that point is like it brings up this whole other thing where it's like I'm out of integrity with myself.
And how to
And
get back into alignment for sure.
or discover new levels of integrity. And that's really what I found with
Mm.
most of our course members is it's rarely back into alignment. It's
Mm.
usually going into levels of higher order, deeper alignment, deeper integration. And
Mhm.
integrity and integration is essentially the same word, but it integrates our life at another level. It integrates our physiology at another level. So the physiology becomes regenerative. And then
Mm.
relationships become regenerative.
I love that. That's good. Okay, now I have some reading to do. That's so great. Well, I so appreciate you coming and spending this time with us today, and for all of the wisdom that you just shared. What is the best way for people to get in contact with you? I know that you gave us what is it, yogahealer.com or?
Yeah, that's where I live. Yogahealer.com. Yoga Healer podcast is where I talk. We have a lot on YouTube. We have a number of different playlists. I think we have 20 playlists on YouTube that are really topic specific, because I have been generating content for 20 years. So there's no shortage of me on the World Wide Web. I'd say, anyone who's interested in their like this whole thing of like you have multi-dimensional life goals, and if there's parts that are behind, just start with the body goals session and talk to us one-on-one. That's how we can, because we have a lot of resources, we also have a lot of like these starter courses that help you really figure out your next level of life. And that's the only way for us to get you in the right one for you is through that. So I would just go to yogahealer.com/body-goals and just talk to us. And what I always tell people is like, be honest, be vulnerable, be totally real on that conversation with where you're at, because that's how we can help you the most.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks again. And thank you for all of you who have been listening to the very end of this great conversation. And we want to invite you right now to join us backstage in the VIP Facebook group for a quick training with Cate. And if you're not in the group right now, then you want to request to join the Lioness Uncaged group on Facebook. You can also find us at thelionessmethod.com, where you can get all the information about the podcast and the work that I do. So until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye for now.